Welcome to the final part in the Photon 101 series. Hey, it's me, Saul, and today I am going to teach you how to play, how to pilot, how to be one with the Photon deck. Let's get started. So in this series, I've already talked about how to build a Photon deck, so I'm just going to throw out card names and compositions that you should probably already know, like Photon Thrasher, Advancer, the Boss Monster, all that kind of stuff. You know what these cards are at this point. So how do I start with a Photon deck? Well, as you may be aware, this is an OTK focused deck. So you are trying to kill your opponent in one turn without giving them a chance to get into their full strategies or even properly respond sometimes. The sad thing about this is you cannot always go second. Sometimes you will go first, which means that obviously you can't one turn kill them, since when you go first you can't attack. We'll talk more about what you do when you go first in a little bit, but assuming that you go second, what you want to do is, well, do whatever you can to clear your opponent's back row. You either hate True Nade or you use the card Galaxy Cyclone to destroy whatever pieces of back row that you can. If you don't open on Hatronade or Galaxy Cyclone, it's advised that you use the Galaxy Photon skill to return one card from your hand back into your deck, and then draw out one copy of Galaxy Cyclone to at least do what you can to put a dent in your opponent's back row. You do not want to be disrupted on your way to your, main play. Your opening cards are Photon Thrasher, Photon Advancer, and Photon Vanisher. They can all be special summoned from your hand. Now, if you don't open with any of them, what you can do is normal summon Photon Lizard and tribute Photon Lizard to search out a different card from the deck that can be special summoned. That's the point of Photon Lizard. It's a searching card. So assuming that you brick but Photon Lizard is in your hand, since none of the other cards actually need a normal summon, you can use Photon Lizard's effect to get yourself started. There are a couple of different ways that you can go about it, but the goal that you're trying to hit when starting up is to get 2 monsters at least on the field. The primary way of doing this is to special summon Photon Thrasher while there are no monsters on your side of the field. Advancer and Vanisher will then be able to special summon themselves alongside him, so if you have either or both, you can special summon them, and then Photon Vanisher will add Galaxy Eyes from your deck to your hand. Now, if you haven't used your skill up until now, you can then use it to get yourself a Photon Stream of Destruction from your deck. This will allow you to quick play banish some of the cards that your opponent has at their disposal, depending on how many Photon Streams you have. At this point, you would overlay 2 monsters to XYZ summon into Starliege Lord Galaxion. Now, the 2 monsters that you generally want to use are Photon Thrasher, because Photon Thrasher cannot attack if you control other monsters, and you want to use Photon Vanisher as well, because Photon Vanisher can't attack on the turn that it's summoned, and on top of that, Vanisher gives Galaxion the effect to banish cards that it destroys. Now remember what I said about going first. You can't kill your opponent on that turn, so when I go first, I summon Galaxion in defense position. He has more defense than he has attack, since he has 2,100 defense, 2,000 attack, so anything that would beat over you while you're in defense position would have beaten over you anyway if you were in attack position, so you would effectively just be giving away damage for free. There's no downside on doing this on turn 1, since like I said, you're not attacking. Obviously, if you're going second, you put him in attack position, and then you detach 2 materials to summon Galaxy Eyes from the deck. You can detach 1 material to summon Galaxy Eyes from your hand, but ideally, you want to use the skill to return a Galaxy Eyes from your hand back into the deck to draw a better, more useful card. On top of that, this deck isn't very good at drawing cards or maintaining card advantage, so it's not very advised to special summon Galaxy Eyes from your hand in most situations. There are exceptions to this, so you're going to have to use your better judgment, but generally speaking, you want to summon the card from the deck. If you're going first, you set however many Photon Streams of Destruction you have, and you hope that it's enough to disrupt your opponent effectively. Your opponent will normal summon, set, do all of the things that they're doing, and you can just banish. It's a quick play spell, so as soon as a turn starts, as soon as a monster hits the field, in fact, before a monster hits the field, you can activate Photon Stream of Destruction, but don't do that. The reason being, you can banish your own cards. Please don't banish your own cards. So wait for them to summon a monster and then banish whatever you need to, or banish their back row. It's entirely up to you. It's entirely up to the situation. The primary focus there is making it to the next turn. Now, a little something interesting that you can do is use a trap card, Eternal Galaxy. Now, Eternal Galaxy has the ability to transform a Galaxion that you control into a Neo Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. You rank up on top of an existing Galaxion using this trap card. The only way to do it though is if you already control a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon on the field. Now, why is this relevant? A lot of people, when they see a Galaxy Eyes on the field, will try and Book of Moon it or get rid of it on turn 1 to be able to make their plays. The reason why that's a problem is because Photon Stream of Destruction is only activatable if you control a Galaxy Eyes monster. So if they deal with your Galaxy Eyes, all of your back row becomes dead, unless unless you have Eternal Galaxy. Eternal Galaxy will rank you up into a Neo Galaxy Eyes Dragon. So all of your Photon Streams of Destruction will still work even though your initial dragon was dealt with. That's just something interesting to keep in mind when you've gone first. Now, when you've gone second, what you do is, generally speaking, leave your Photon Streams of Destruction in your hand so that you can activate them this turn. If you read on the field that your opponent might be able to take this to the next turn, it could be a good idea to set one copy, maybe more, depending on how many cards there are to deal with, how likely it is that they have hand traps, and so on and so forth. You have to read the situation and know what to do. The reason being that if you set a Photon Stream of Destruction, it is not usable for the rest of that turn, right? But if it's in your hand, since it's a quick play spell, you can activate it during the main phase, the battle phase, whenever you need to. So you really have to read to determine if you're actually going to be able to achieve the OTK. If you think that you're going to be able to do it, then I would full send, invest all of the resources, banish everything that they have on the field, and go for it. Now, if you've banished everything and you have Photon Streams of Destruction left over, set them anyway to be safe in case your opponent manages to survive until the next turn. Once you're done banishing cards, you can go in for lethal. Galaxy Eyes has 3,000 attack, Galaxion has 2,000, that is 5,000 points of damage on the field. That is more than enough for lethal. Now, some people will also special summon a Photon Advancer along with their starting plays. I mentioned that Advancer was also one of your starting cards. Now, here's the thing about that. You can special summon Advancer to create a 7k board, but remember, your opponent only has 4,000 life points. It might be worth it to keep that Advancer in your hand as follow-up. Like I said, this deck isn't very good at drawing cards or maintaining card advantage. However, assuming that the OTK fails and your board gets wiped, but you held on to that Advancer, well, if you draw basically any monster in the deck, you can normal summon Advancer, get the other monster on the field, create another Galaxion, and with the second Galaxy Eyes in your deck, make another 5,000 damage board. So it's really that decision between being aggressive and trying to be defensive and withholding your resources, planning the duel out a little bit more. Sometimes it's better to just invest all your resources and go for the full send, because what if your opponent has hand traps that you weren't aware of? Even though you banished everything on the field, they could still make it to the next turn. You never really know, but then there are also situations where you invest everything and maybe you get Drowning Mirror forced, or something else happens and your board gets cleared, you draw into your next card next turn, but because you had no other resources left over, you can't really do anything. This is a deck that wants to OTK, so trying to manage resources with a deck with that kind of focus isn't always easy. It's a case-by-case basis, because I've had situations where I invested everything and I ended up wishing I hadn't, and cases where I didn't invest enough and I regretted it on the next turn. Back to the OTK, at this point you either have a 5,000 or 7,000 point board on the field, and to be completely honest with you, most people will just scoop before you even get to this point, right? If they don't have the means to counter you, if they don't have the cards at their disposal, or if they just don't want to play against Photons, then honestly, I had just as many victories through people scooping as I did by actually dealing lethal damage. Like, it was hard to get footage for this series because everyone just kept surrendering before I could even finish building my board. That's especially true if I hate True-Nated them, because at that point there was really nothing that they could do. With this, you can effectively win just about any duel if you've dealt with the back row, you have a Photon Stream of Destruction to banish cards on the field, you create a clear board, and you go in for that lethal damage. Now, let me give you a few other just additional tips to keep in mind. Even if you don't open on Thrasher, so long as you have Vanisher and Advancer, you can still achieve the opening play. Like I said, any two cards on the field will work for you just fine. Advancer can be normal summoned. Advancer can take up your normal summon, so you normal summon Advancer and special summon Vanisher to go along with it. The only difference is you may no longer have access to that 7k board. There's a fun little technique that I do enjoy though, whereby you normal summon Photon Lizard. Now stick with me. Normal summon Photon Lizard and special summon Advancer to go alongside the Photon Lizard. Advancer can be special summoned so long as you control another Photon monster. Now, you tribute the lizard that is on the field to add a Photon Vanisher to your hand, special summon the Photon Vanisher alongside the Photon Advancer, and then you add a Galaxy Eyes to your hand. So using these three cards, well, think of it like like this. You go turn 1 and you have 4 cards in your hand. You normal summoned Lizard, you special summoned Advancer, so you had 2 cards left in your hand. You got a Vanisher out of the deck, you special summoned it and added Galaxy Eyes to your hand. So you still have 3 cards in hand and Galaxion has hit the field. That is some good resource management if ever I did see it. The reason I wanted to point that out is because in that situation, I've seen some people normal summon the Lizard, tribute it, and then add a Thrasher to their hand, special summon Thrasher, then special summon Advancer, and they call it a day at that point. But there's a more efficient way to manage the resources there, so give it a shot in this alternative way. Also remember that Photon Advancer can special summon itself alongside itself. Advancer can be normal summoned and then you special summon a second copy. In all honesty, I know that I've said that Photon Vanisher is the best card in the archetype, but it's a close tie with Photon Advancer. They are both amazing, and Photon Advancer is free. Remember that Galaxy Eyes does actually have an effect. It's not one that you use all the time, but it can banish itself and one of your opponent's monsters during battle until the end phase. This creates a whole slew of possibilities. For instance, this can help to clear the field for lethal in certain situations. Assume that you don't have enough Photon Streams of Destruction and there's one monster left on the field, banish it using this card, and then you can potentially go in for lethal. Now, remember that 7,000 damage board that you had to begin with? If Galaxy Eyes banishes itself, then Photon Advancer goes from 2,000 attack to 1,000 because it's only got boosted attack when there's another Photon monster on the field. Galaxion doesn't satisfy that requirement, so you'd only be able to do 3,000 points of damage in that instance, so be careful. This is just some additional tech that you could potentially use in certain situations. Galaxy Eyes effect will also help you to remove materials from XYZ monsters, because if an XYZ monster is banished, even if it comes back later on, those materials it had do not come back with it, so that banish does that for you. Also keep in mind that if a monster is banished and then returned to the field, effects that are present on the monster, they go away. So if your attack has been reduced to 0 or something along those lines, you banish yourself and you come back, your attack will be reset from the point that you return at the end phase onward. Right? So it's basically clearing all the debuffs on your monster. And because it's a quick play effect during battle, you can use it to dodge certain card effects. If your opponent actually lets you declare an attack before using a Karma Cut or any number of card effects, you can banish yourself before the Karma Cut actually goes through. Just remember that this is a targeted effect, so if you're up against a monster that cannot be targeted, no banish will take place. You won't even get the option to try it, so just remember that, okay? One or two other things. Remember that you have your extra deck of light monsters as potential follow-up or as alternative means of just winning in general. Excalibur is in the deck and it can be 4,000 attack on the field if you need to dance around a perceived battling box or Veil, because Veil will only work if your opponent takes damage, survives, and then it will activate to recover the life points lost. But if they lose everything at once, then that doesn't work. Galaxy Eyes doesn't have the potential to do this because it only deals 3,000 attack at a time, but you know, Excalibur's there. On top of that, you have Utopia and Utopia Ray in case your life points get reduced, assuming that things have gone wrong, and you can potentially, you know, achieve lethal in a different way that way, right? By using Utopia Ray's effect to reduce your opponent's attack to 0, boost itself up to 4,000. That is perfect lethal in another way. You also have Palladynamo, which reduces your opponent's attack to 0, and then it can attack with 2,000 damage. So assuming that you missed the OTK in some way, shape, or form, but they still took damage, Palladynamo can be your lethal. And then last but not least, as we already talked about, you have a second copy of Galaxion in case things have gone wrong. It can really be good to get back into your plays and effectively save the duel for you, right? So those are all of the standard plays. I don't believe I've missed anything. There's always additional tech that people will add into decks, right? Because I've spoken about the fact that some people use Levianeer, some people use Necro Valley. There's all sorts of different things that you could do in terms of your deck composition, but if you're running a standard Galaxy Eyes deck, that is how you open, that is how you handle yourself, that is how you conduct yourself, that's how you breathe, sleep, think, etc, etc. So thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed the Photon 101 series and I appreciate all of the support that these videos have received. Please, if you did enjoy the series, consider subscribing because we're gonna be doing more series on more decks and you might find something that you like. With that being said, I've been Saul. I hope that you've been entertained and informed, and goodbye.